All right, imagine this. You wake up one morning and the world has just gone dark. The systems that we depend on for literally everything, navigation, communication, you name it, they've just vanished. Now, this isn't some sci-fi movie plot. This is the very real potential end of a catastrophic chain reaction that could start, well, at any moment, right over our heads. So let's walk through exactly how this nightmare could unfold.
It all starts with something that seems almost insignificant. A tiny piece of an old rocket, maybe no bigger than a smartphone, but it's moving at a speed that's just impossible to wrap your head around, and it slams into a perfectly good working satellite.
The impact is, to put it mildly, catastrophic. In a fraction of a second, that one satellite is completely obliterated. It becomes a dense cloud of razor-sharp fragments, and every single one of those fragments is now a brand new bullet in the sky.
Now, this isn't just debris floating around. This is a hypervelocity storm. Each tiny piece of shrapnel hits with the force of an explosion, and with every new collision, it creates even more projectiles, setting off this absolutely devastating chain reaction.
Back here on Earth, the fallout is immediate. GPS satellites, they're some of the first to go. Your phone's map is useless. Global banking grinds to a halt. Supply chains completely collapse. Emergency services can't coordinate. The internet we all rely on, it starts to flicker, and then it dies as our communication satellites are just knocked out one by one.
And the ultimate consequence? The real kicker? Low Earth orbit becomes a totally impassable minefield. Launching new spacecraft, whether it's for exploration or just to replace the systems we've lost, becomes impossible. We effectively become prisoners on our own planet, and not just for a little while. We're talking for generations, maybe even centuries.
You know, this whole nightmare scenario, it actually has a name, the Kessler Effect. And as much as it sounds like the plot of a Hollywood blockbuster, it is a very, very real threat that scientists have been warning us about for decades.
So how in the world does one little collision lead to trapping all of humanity on Earth? Well, to get that, we need to dive into the physics of this orbital domino effect.
So this was proposed way back in 1978 by a NASA scientist named Donald Kessler. His theory is basically, a runaway chain reaction in space. He figured that once the amount of junk up there hits a certain critical point, a single collision could trigger a self-sustaining cascade. Each crash makes more debris, which makes more crashes way more likely, and on it goes until our orbital highways are just completely, totally unusable.
And let's be clear, this is not a new problem. We have been cluttering up our orbit since the very first satellite launch back in 1957. What started out as, old rocket parts and maybe an astronaut's lost glove has now reached the exact tipping point that Kessler warned us about. The collisions themselves are now the main thing, creating new, dangerous junk.
Okay, so let's try to put some numbers on this, because it's one thing to talk about it, but it's another thing to see the scale. Just how crowded is it up there? Honestly, it's staggering.
141 million. That's the number. That's the estimated number of debris pieces that are currently whipping around the Earth, based on our best statistical models. And we're talking about everything from whole dead satellites down to tiny little flecks of paint. But here's the thing. At orbital speeds, even a fleck of paint is lethal.
So to put that speed into perspective, this space junk is traveling more than 30 times faster than a commercial jet. At 18,000 miles an hour, an object does not need to be big to cause truly catastrophic damage.
Think about that for a second. A close approach happens about once every 22 seconds. That means satellite operators are getting dozens and dozens of collision alerts every single day. They're constantly having to move their spacecraft to get out of the way. This isn't some rare freak event. It's just another Tuesday in orbit.
And what really makes this a generational problem, a true crisis, is that this junk doesn't just go away. The higher up it is, the longer it stays in orbit. And you can see here, at those really crowded, valuable altitudes where our critical GPS and internet satellites live, that junk can circle the Earth for millennia, a permanent hazard for every single future generation.
So all of this, it leads to the most unsettling question in this whole conversation. The debate among scientists isn't really if the Kessler effect is going to happen, it's whether it's already started.
Some experts, they genuinely believe the chain reaction may have already begun. We just can't see the full effects yet. The amount of junk is growing so incredibly fast that even if we stopped every single space launch on the planet right now, the number of collisions would probably continue to increase all on its own.
And this is why it matters so much. I mean, GPS isn't just for your car's map, it underpins the entire global economy. the internet and cell service, obviously. Weather forecasting would become a total guessing game. And let's not forget the direct threat to human life, like the astronauts on the International Space Station who already have to perform regular maneuvers just to dodge this stuff.
What is maybe most alarming is the sheer speed at which this could all spiral out of control. Recent models have this new concept called the harm clock, and what it suggests is that if our ability to dodge debris were to fail for some reason, a full-blown cascade could happen in just 2 to 3 days. I mean, that's the window between a normal day and a world without satellites.
Okay, look, it's a grim picture, I know, but it's not entirely hopeless. The good news is that space agencies and private companies are working on this. They are actively trying to figure out how to tackle this problem before it really is too late.
And the approach is really twofold. First, and this is the obvious one, we have got to stop making the problem worse. That means creating and actually enforcing international rules for getting rid of old satellites. But second, and this is the really hard part, we have to invent technology to actively go up there and clean up the most dangerous stuff that's already floating around.
And this isn't just talk, we're seeing some really cool innovation here. One super promising idea is this drag sail from the European Space Agency. It's basically a space parachute that pops out at the end of a satellite's mission. It increases drag from the atmosphere so the satellite falls out of orbit and burns up way faster, instead of just becoming another hazard for centuries. And there are other ideas too, everything from giant space nets and harpoons to actual lasers that could nudge junk out of the way.
So, that's where we are. What was once our gateway to the final frontier has become a high-speed junkyard, a minefield. The challenge is just immense, but the stakes could not possibly be higher. It is a race against time, a race to clean up our own cosmic mess before we accidentally lock ourselves on Earth and slam the window to the stars shut forever.